My brother made a family tree for our parents' 50th anniversary, but left out my black husband and our mixed kids, just my name with a blank space. When I showed up with my own version that included my family's white II veteran grandfather and first black nurse grandmother, he stayed silent at the party. 3 days later, CPS showed up at 7 a.m. with police claiming we were guilty of severe neglect because our kids walked to school with friends and we have African masks on our walls, then started a months-long campaign using his financial firm connections to destroy our lives. When my brother Dale announced his big family tree project for our parents' 50th anniversary, my kids were the first people I told. They're mixed. My husband Jerome is black and I'm white, and honestly, they rarely get invited to the official family stuff. Dale always has some excuse about keeping things traditional or simple, but I figured a family tree would be different. When I told them, my daughter Aisha literally screamed with joy, "We're gonna be on grandma's wall with everybody else," and my son Marcus started drawing our branch immediately. They get so excited when they're actually included in family things. It breaks my heart how rare it is. 2 weeks before the anniversary party, Dale sent me his draft to review. I opened it expecting to see my beautiful family, but there we were, me, alone on my branch. No Jerome, no kids, just my name with a tasteful blank space next to it. I called him immediately, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where's my family, Dale?" He cleared his throat. "Look, I'm trying to keep it clean for the presentation. You know how some of the older relatives are." That's when I decided, screw it. If he wouldn't include us, I'd make my own. I spent 3 days creating the most beautiful family tree you've ever seen. Found photos of Jerome's family going back 4 generations. His grandfather who served in World War II. His grandmother who was one of the first black nurses in our state. Our kids' baby photos mixed with their latest school pictures. Everyone who made us who we are. When I showed the kids, Marcus whispered, "We look like we belong there, Mom." "Yeah, baby, you do." The anniversary party was at Dale's country club. Of course it was. I waited until after his PowerPoint presentation of our lily white lineage, then stood up during the toast portion. "I have something to add," I announced, pulling out my poster board. The room went dead silent as I unveiled our complete family tree. Dale forgot a few people, so I helped him out. You could hear a pin drop. Then Jerome's mom started clapping. Then my kids. Then a few cousins I hadn't talked to in years. But Dale? His face went from red to purple to white. He didn't say a word during the party, just kept shooting looks at Jerome like he'd committed some crime by existing. I should have known that silence was dangerous. 3 days later, 7 a.m., pounding on the door. CPS workers with a police escort said they'd received reports of severe neglect and dangerous living conditions. They pushed past Jerome, started photographing everything. The traditional African masks on our walls, violent imagery exposed to children, the fact that Aisha and Marcus walked to school with their friends, lack of supervision, Jerome teaching Marcus to cook, child labor. The worker, this smug-looking woman who kept side-eyeing Jerome, actually wrote down that our kids seemed coached when they said they were happy. "We need to speak to the children privately," she announced. When I protested, she said, "That's exactly what a guilty parent would say." I watched them take my babies into their bedroom, heard Aisha crying through the door. Marcus kept saying, "We didn't do anything wrong. We're happy. Please." 45 minutes they were in there. 45 minutes of Jerome pacing, hands shaking, whispering, "They're gonna take them. Just like everyone said would happen when we got married. They're gonna take our babies." When they finally came out, the lead worker said they'd have to do a full investigation, said the kids showed signs of identity confusion and divided loyalties, said maybe they'd be better served in a more stable environment. Jerome's mom had to physically hold me back. The next 2 weeks were hell. Interviews, home visits, they contacted the kids' schools, their doctors, even their friends' parents. Every normal parenting decision became evidence. We let them pick their own hairstyles, parents refusing to guide children. They speak a little AAVE at home, inappropriate language exposure. The Black History Month project where they presented on both sides of their heritage, forcing racial politics on minors. I knew it was Dale. Had to be. The timing, the specific complaints. He was the only one who knew enough about our daily life to weaponize it like this. But proving it, that was another story. It took hiring a lawyer we couldn't afford, and 3 months of pure terror before CPS finally closed the case. Unsubstantiated, they said, like they were doing us a favor. Like they hadn't tried to rip our family apart based on one Rax relative's lies. The kids still have nightmares. Aisha won't let me out of her sight. Marcus stopped drawing family pictures. But here's the thing about Dale. He made one mistake. He used his work email to file the complaint. And Jerome's cousin, she works IT for the state. I spent the next few days staring at that last line I'd written. The rest of the story, like it was something simple, something I could just package up and share, but my hands kept shaking every time I tried to type more. Jerome found me at the kitchen table at 3 a.m., laptop open, cursor blinking. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, and I felt him reading over my shoulder. When he got to the part about the CPS visit, his whole body tensed. "You writing about it helps," he whispered. "Maybe other families going through this need to know they're not alone." I nodded, but couldn't speak. Aisha had woken up screaming again an hour earlier, convinced someone was taking her away. Marcus had started sleeping on our bedroom floor, dragging his blanket in silently each night. The next morning, I called Jerome's cousin Nathy. She worked in the state IT department, and when I'd mentioned Dale using his work email, her voice had gotten sharp. "Work email? From his company account?" She paused. "That's traceable. Everything going through state systems gets logged." My heart started racing. "Could you?" "I'll look into it. Legally, of course. Public records and all that." While waiting for Nathy's investigation, life had to continue. The kids still needed to go to school, though now I walked them all the way to the door instead of letting them go with friends. Their teachers had been questioned during the CPS investigation, and I could see the way some of them looked at us now, careful, distant, like we were dangerous. At pickup one afternoon, Marcus's teacher pulled me aside. She glanced around nervously before speaking. "I wanted you to know, during the investigation they asked specifically about Marcus's drawings, whether he drew concerning images. I told them he draws beautiful family portraits, but they seemed disappointed by that answer." My stomach dropped. Did they say who reported the concern about his drawings? She shook her head, but her eyes flicked toward the parking lot where Dale's wife Sandra was loading her own kids into their SUV. Sandra, who volunteered in the art room. Sandra, who had access to all the children's work. That evening, I found Marcus in his room, coloring books untouched. He was just sitting on his bed, staring at the wall where his family portraits used to hang. I'd taken them down during the CPS visits, afraid they'd find find something else to criticize. Want to draw with me? I asked, sitting beside him. He shook his head. What if I draw something wrong again? You never drew anything wrong, baby. Not ever. Then why did those people come? I pulled him close, feeling his little body trembling. Because sometimes people do mean things when they're angry, but you didn't do anything wrong. Jerome appeared in the doorway with Aisha. She was clinging to his hand, something she'd started doing constantly since the investigation. Our confident, independent girl had become a shadow, following one of us everywhere. Family meeting, Jerome announced, his voice deliberately light. Kitchen table. We gathered around, and Jerome pulled out a piece of paper. We're making a list, he said. All the good things about our family. Why? Aisha asked suspiciously. Because sometimes when bad things happen, we forget the good stuff, so we're going to remember. Marcus picked up a crayon tentatively. Can I write that Daddy makes the best pancakes? Absolutely, I said, blinking back tears. We spent an hour adding to the list. Small things, silly things, important things. By the end, both kids were almost smiling. Almost. That night, after they were asleep, Jerome and I sat on the porch, the weight of everything pressed down on us. My mom called today, he said quietly. Dale showed up at her church. I stiffened. What? Asking questions about us, pretending to be concerned. Said he was worried about the kids' home environment. That manipulative. She shut him down. Told him if he had concerns, he should talk to us directly. But Sarah, he paused. My mom said several church members were listening. Now they're all concerned too. The pattern was becoming clear. Dale wasn't done with just the CPS report. He was conducting a campaign, spreading his poison throughout our community. Death by 1,000 cuts. My phone buzzed. Nathy, can you meet tomorrow? Bring Jerome. I found something. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from our neighborhood. Nathy looked serious as she slid a folder across the table. I couldn't access the actual email, she said carefully, but I found the system logs. Multiple emails from Dale's work account to state agencies, not just CPS. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Department of Health, Department of Education, even Animal Control. He reported us to Animal Control. Jerome's voice was incredulous. Said you had dangerous dogs that threatened neighborhood children, Nathy explained. They closed it immediately since you don't have any pets. Page after page of complaints, all filed within days of the anniversary party, all from Dale's work email, all targeting our family from different angles. This is harassment, I breathed. This has to be illegal. Nathy nodded. It could be, but proving intent is hard. Unless what? Unless there's a pattern beyond just your family. Has Dale done anything like this before? I thought back through years of family dynamics. Dale's controlling nature, his fury when things didn't go his way, his strange satisfaction when certain relatives got divorced or faced hardships. I need to make some calls, I said. That evening, I started reaching out to family members, carefully, quietly, starting with my cousin Alexandra, who'd gone through a nasty divorce 5 years earlier. It's funny you ask, she said slowly. Right before things got really bad, we started getting all these official complaints. CPS said someone reported my ex for substance use. The health department got a report about our pool. It nearly destroyed him in court. Did you ever find out who reported it? A long pause. But Dale was the one who told me I should file for divorce in the first place. Said he had concerns about my ex. One call led to another. My aunt's adopted daughter who'd faced sudden scrutiny from immigration services. My cousin whose home daycare got reported for violations that didn't exist. Always after some conflict with Dale. Always from anonymous reports. We need to document everything, Jerome said as I hung up from the fifth similar story. Build a timeline. But even as we gathered evidence, daily life grew harder. The kids' playdate invitations dried up completely. Parents whispered at school pickup. Our previously friendly neighbors became cold, distant. Then came the church incident. We'd attended Jerome's family church for years. It was one of the few places where our mixed family felt completely welcomed. That Sunday started normally, until Pastor Williams asked to speak with us after service. I've been getting calls, he said uncomfortably. Concerns about your family situation. From Dale? Jerome asked directly. The pastor's silence was answer enough. What kind of concerns? I pressed. That the children are being raised in a confusing environment. That they're being taught to reject their heritage. He looked pained. I know it's nonsense, but several members have expressed worry. I felt something break inside me. This safe space, this sanctuary for our family, was being poisoned too. As we walked to our car, Aisha tugged on my hand. Why was Pastor Williams sad? It's complicated, baby. Is it because of what happened with those people who came to our house? I knelt down to her level. Some people don't understand families like ours, but that's their problem, not ours. She nodded solemnly, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. Another piece of innocence chipped away. That night, I lay awake thinking about the investigation folder, about the pattern emerging, about how Dale had weaponized systems meant to protect children to terrorize them instead. Jerome stirred beside me. You're planning something. Maybe. Whatever it is, we do it together. I turned to face him. He's not going to stop. The CPS case is closed, but he's just moving to other tactics. The church, the community, probably our jobs next. So what do? We stop playing defense. The next morning, I called in sick to work and started my research. Dale worked for a mid-sized financial firm, one that prided itself on integrity and community values. Their website featured diverse families, smiling children, promises of ethical practices. I wondered what they'd think about an employee using company resources to harass a mixed-race family, but I needed more than just speculation. I needed proof that would be undeniable, and that meant getting help from someone I'd been avoiding, my mother. I picked up my phone with trembling fingers. My mother and I had barely spoken since the anniversary party. She'd sat there in silence while Dale presented his whitewashed family tree, never once standing up for her own grandchildren. But she held a key position in our family dynamics, and more importantly, she knew Dale's history better than anyone. She answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. I could picture her in her pristine kitchen, probably arranging flowers or polishing silver, anything to keep her hands busy while avoiding difficult conversations. I explained what I needed, keeping my voice steady and factual. There was a long pause before she responded. When she finally spoke, her words were measured, careful. She admitted she'd noticed patterns over the years, but had always dismissed them as coincidence. The way certain family members faced sudden troubles after crossing Dale, the anonymous complaints that seemed to follow family conflicts. She agreed to look through old family correspondence and calendars, though her reluctance was palpable. Before hanging up, she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. Dale had recently been promoted at his firm, given oversight of their community outreach programs that included partnerships with local schools and social services. That afternoon, while the kids were at school, I drove to the public library. I I needed to research without leaving digital footprints on our home computer. The librarian, an older woman who'd helped Marcus with his first library card, gave me a strange look but directed me to the research computers. I spent hours digging through public records, business directories, and social media. Dale's company, Meridian Financial Services, had an impressive online presence. Their community involvement page showed Dale shaking hands with school board members, presenting checks to youth programs, speaking at Chamber of Commerce events. He'd built himself a reputation as a pillar of the community. My phone vibrated. A text from Jerome. Marcus's teacher had called him in for an unexpected parent conference. My stomach dropped as I rushed to the school. The meeting was already in progress when I arrived. Jerome sat across from Marcus's teacher, the principal, and the school counselor. Their faces were grave. On the table between them lay several of Marcus's drawings. The principal cleared his throat and began explaining their concerns. Marcus had been drawing pictures of his family again, but now they included dark figures lurking at the edges. In one, a shadow loomed over our house. In another, faceless people surrounded our family tree. The counselor leaned forward, her voice dripping with false concern. She suggested Marcus might benefit from additional support, perhaps through one of their partner programs. She slid a brochure across the table. My heart sank when I saw the Meridian Financial Services logo at the bottom. Their Healthy Families Initiative offered counseling and family support services. Jerome's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. We both understood the trap, refused the help, and we'd look like negligent parents. Accept it, and Dale would have direct access to our family through his company's program. We thanked them for their concern and said we'd discuss it at home. As we walked to our cars, Jerome's jaw was clenched so tight I worried he'd crack a tooth. We agreed he'd pick up Aisha while I went home to think. Back at the house, I found a package on the doorstep. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting. Inside were photocopies of old letters, calendar pages, and family newsletters dating back 15 years. She'd used sticky notes to mark relevant sections. The pattern was undeniable. Every time someone challenged Dale or threatened his control over family narratives, troubles followed. My cousin who'd wanted to bring her girlfriend to Christmas dinner suddenly faced a tax audit. This is like watching a trap close in slow motion, and I just want to reach through and protect them all from this awful manipulation that's spreading into every safe place they. My uncle who'd questioned Dale's handling of Grandpa's estate found himself reported for elder abuse. The dates lined up perfectly with family conflicts. One sticky note in my mother's shaky handwriting simply said, "I should have seen it sooner. I'm sorry." The front door burst open. Aisha ran in, tears streaming down her face. Jerome followed, his expression murderous. At school pickup, several parents had pulled their children away from Aisha, whispering about the family under investigation. One mother had actually told her daughter not to play with kids from an unstable home. I held my daughter as she sobbed, feeling rage build in my chest. Dale wasn't just targeting Jerome and me anymore. He was destroying our children's lives, isolating them, making them outcasts in their own community. That evening, Nathy called with an update. She'd found something interesting in the system logs. Dale's emails to various agencies had all been sent during business hours from his work computer. But here was the kicker. They'd been routed through the company's secure server, the one used for sensitive financial data. That meant they'd have detailed logs, backups, maybe even the actual email content. The problem was accessing it. Nathy explained that while she could see the routing information, getting the actual emails would require either a warrant or someone with admin access at Meridian Financial Services. I thought about Dale's position, his new oversight role, his carefully cultivated reputation. Then I thought about my children's tears, Jerome's shaking hands, the way our family was being systematically destroyed. The next few days blurred together. I documented everything obsessively, every strange look at school pickup, every canceled play date, every whispered conversation that stopped when we approached. Jerome threw himself into research, finding other families who'd been targeted by similar campaigns. Most were too scared to talk, but a few shared their stories. One mother, whose mixed-race family had been reported repeatedly until they moved out of state, gave us valuable advice. She told us to document everything, but also to start building our own network, find allies, create our own narrative, make it harder for Dale to isolate us. We started small. Jerome's mother organized a dinner at her church, inviting families who'd been supportive. We shared our story, not asking for anything, just wanting people to know the truth. The response was mixed, but several families expressed outrage at what had happened. Marcus's art teacher, the one who'd warned me about the investigation, quietly began displaying his family portraits in the classroom again. She made a point of praising his work in front of other parents. Small acts of resistance, but they mattered. Then came the workplace incident. I'd returned to work after my sick day, trying to maintain normalcy. My supervisor called me in for a meeting. Someone had sent an anonymous email to HR, expressing concern about my emotional stability and fitness for work. The email suggested I might be a danger to myself or others, recommended a psychological evaluation. My supervisor, thankfully, knew me well enough to be skeptical. She showed me the email. The language was formal, corporate, peppered with HR terminology, exactly the kind of language someone in financial services might use. I broke down and told her everything. The family tree, the CPS investigation, the ongoing harassment. She listened, her face growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and told me something that changed everything. Her brother worked at Meridian Financial Services, in IT. The meeting that followed felt like something out of a spy movie, except we were just three adults in a Starbucks, talking in hushed voices over overpriced coffee. My supervisor's brother, Chen, was a soft-spoken man who radiated quiet competence. He listened to our story without interrupting, occasionally nodding or asking for clarification. When we finished, he sat silently for a long moment, then pulled out his laptop. He explained that Meridian's email system had recently been upgraded. During the migration, he'd been tasked with backing up all historical data, including emails sent through the secure server, including Dale's emails. The ethical implications weighed on him visibly. Accessing those emails without authorization would be a violation of company policy, possibly illegal. But as he looked at the photos of my children on my phone, saw Aisha's tear-stained face and Marcus's fearful eyes, something shifted in his expression. He told us he needed time to think. We exchanged numbers and parted ways, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. He was a good man being asked to choose between his job and justice. While we waited for Chen's decision, Dale escalated again. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, formal and cold. Dale was invoking his rights as a family member to request suggest a welfare check on our children. He cited the CPS investigation, the concerns raised at school, the need for additional oversight. He'd copied extended family members, painting himself as the concerned uncle just trying to protect innocent children. Several relatives called that day. Some offered support, others expressed worry. The family was dividing, battle lines being drawn. My aunt suggested maybe the kids would benefit from spending time in a more stable environment, just temporarily. My cousin wondered if we were being too defensive, asked if maybe Dale had valid concerns. Jerome's family rallied around us, but I could see the strain wearing on him. He'd grown up facing racism, but this was different. This was targeted, personal, relentless. It was breaking him down in ways I'd never seen before. That night, I found him in Marcus's room, watching our son sleep. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. When I wrapped my arms around him, he whispered his deepest fear, that maybe we should have listened to everyone who warned us about mixed relationships, that maybe our love had doomed our children to this pain. I held him tighter and reminded him of our wedding vows, of the life we'd built, of the strength our children showed every day. We would not let Dale win. We would not let hate destroy our family. The next morning brought unexpected hope. Chen called, his voice resolved. He'd found the emails, all of them, not just to CPS, but to the health department, the school board, even to specific parents in our community. Dale had been methodical, calculating, using his professional email to lend credibility to his lies. But Chen had also found something else. Dale had used his company position to access background check services, running searches on Jerome and his family. He'd used company resources to research our finances, our employment history, even our medical records. All clear violations of company policy and possibly federal law. Chen couldn't give us the emails directly, but he could ensure they were discovered through proper channels. He'd already scheduled a routine security audit for the following week, one that would flag unusual activity on the secure server. The trail would lead directly to Dale. While we waited for Chen's audit, I worked on building our case. The photocopies from my mother revealed more patterns. Dale's harassment campaigns always followed the same trajectory. Anonymous complaints to authorities, whisper campaigns in the community, isolation of the target, escalation until the family either capitulated or left. But we weren't leaving, and we weren't capitulating. I reached out to every family member who'd been targeted over the years. Some were too traumatized to revisit their experiences, but others were angry enough to share their stories. My cousin, whose home daycare had been shut down after false reports. My aunt's adopted daughter, who'd been investigated by immigration services. The patterns were identical, the tactics consistent. Jerome's cousin Nathy made another discovery. The state's database showed unusual access patterns for our family's records. Someone had been repeatedly checking for updates on the CPS case, monitoring school records, even accessing traffic violation databases, all from terminals that traced back to Meridian Financial Services IP addresses. The evidence was mounting, but Dale wasn't standing still. He showed up at Aisha's dance recital, sitting in the front row with a concerned expression. He approached other parents during intermission, expressing his worries about his niece's home situation. By the time Aisha took the stage, I could feel the weight of judgmental stares from around the auditorium. Aisha danced beautifully, but I could see her scanning the audience, noting the cold faces, the whispered conversations. My brave girl's smile faltered for just a moment before she forced it back in place. Another piece of her childhood innocence stripped away. After the recital, as other children received flowers and congratulations, several parents steered their kids away from Aisha. She stood there in her sparkly costume, confusion and hurt written across her face. Marcus grabbed her hand and they stood together, two mixed-race children learning too young that the world could be cruel. That image broke something in me, or maybe it forged something new. A determination harder than steel, sharper than glass. The security audit at Meridian began on schedule. Chen kept us informed through careful, coded messages. The IT team had found the anomalies. Questions were being asked. Dale's computer was being examined, but Dale must have sensed the walls closing in. He made one last, desperate play. The police showed up on a Friday evening. They'd received a report of a domestic disturbance at our address. Neighbors peered through curtains as the officers questioned us separately. They found nothing, of course, but the damage was done. We were now the family who'd had the cops called on them. Another mark against us in the community's eyes. Jerome's mother arrived while the police were still there. She marched up to the lead officer and demanded to know who had made the report. The officer couldn't say, but she didn't need him to. We all knew. That weekend, something shifted in our extended family. My mother, who'd been silent for too long, finally found her voice. She called a family meeting, using her position as matriarch to demand attendance. Even Dale couldn't refuse. The meeting was held at my parents' house, in the same living room where Dale had planned to display his whitewashed family tree. My mother had prepared meticulously. She'd created her own presentation, complete with timelines, documentation, and irrefutable evidence of Dale's pattern of harassment. Family members arrived in waves. Some came to support Dale, others out of curiosity. Jerome's family came in force, a united front of love and protection. My children sat between us, Aisha holding my hand, Marcus leaning against Jerome. My mother stood before the assembled family, age showing in her stooped shoulders but steel in her voice. She began with an apology for years of silence, for choosing comfort over courage, for allowing Dale's poison to spread unchecked through our family. Then she presented the evidence. Every incident, every false report, every family member who'd been targeted. The room grew quieter with each revelation. Dale's supporters began shifting uncomfortably. His wife Sandra's face went pale as she recognized her own involvement. Dale tried to interrupt, to deflect, to deny. But my mother had come prepared. She had dates, times, patterns that couldn't be explained away. She showed how every campaign followed family conflicts, how Dale had weaponized systems meant to protect families to destroy them instead. The turning point came when Alexandra spoke up. I'm feeling such a mix of emotions watching Jerome's mother stand up to those officers and demand answers. She's showing such fierce protective love for her family right now. And then seeing the narrator's mother finally finding her courage after all those years of staying quiet, preparing all that evidence and calling everyone together. It takes so much strength to admit you were wrong and then actually do something about it. My cousin, who'd lost her ex-husband to Dale's manipulation, stood and shared her story. Then another cousin, then an aunt. One by one, family members revealed years of pain, manipulation, and fear. Dale's mask finally slipped, his face contorted with rage as he accused everyone of conspiring against him. He ranted about maintaining family standards, protecting the family name, keeping bloodlines pure. The words hung in the air like poison, his true nature finally exposed for all to see. Sandra grabbed their children and left, her face a mixture of horror and dawning realization. Other family members followed, distancing themselves from Dale's venom. But Dale wasn't finished. He turned on Jerome, spewing raxed vitriol that made my children flinch, and Jerome's family rise to their feet. My father, who'd been silent throughout, finally stood. He walked to Dale, his son, his pride and joy, and told him to leave, to never return, that he was no longer welcome in their home or their lives. Dale left, but not before promising this wasn't over, that he had resources, connections, ways to ensure we'd regret crossing him. The threat hung in the air long after his car disappeared down the street, but something had fundamentally changed. The family had seen Dale's true face. The silence that had protected him for years was broken. We were no longer isolated, no longer fighting alone. Chen's audit at Meridian was concluding. The evidence was damning. Dale had used company resources for personal vendettas, accessed confidential information without authorization, violated numerous policies and possibly laws. The company's legal team was now involved. We prepared for Dale's final desperate moves, but we were ready now. We had documentation, witnesses, a support network. Most importantly, we had truth on our side. The kids were slowly healing. Marcus had started drawing again, tentative sketches of our family tree with strong roots and branches reaching toward the sun. Aisha was finding her confidence again, supported by friends whose parents had heard the real story. But we knew Dale wouldn't go quietly. His entire identity was built on control, on maintaining his version of family perfection. Now that his mask had slipped, he had nothing left to lose. The call from Chen came on a Tuesday morning. Dale had been suspended pending investigation. His computer had yielded a treasure trove of evidence, not just about us, but about other employees he'd targeted, competitors he'd sabotaged, a pattern of abuse stretching back years. Meridian was moving toward termination, but more importantly, they were cooperating with authorities. The FBI had been notified about potential violations of federal law regarding unauthorized access to personal information. Dale's carefully constructed world was crumbling. We should have felt victorious, but mostly we felt exhausted. The fight had taken everything from us, our sense of security, our children's innocence, our faith in family. But it had also shown us something powerful, that love could endure hatred, that truth could overcome lies, that our mixed, beautiful, imperfect family was worth fighting for. As I tucked my children into bed that night, Aisha asked if Uncle Dale would ever hurt us again. I couldn't promise her that he wouldn't try, but I could promise that we would face whatever came together, that our family tree, with all its diverse branches, would continue to grow strong and beautiful. The real work of healing was just beginning. There would be therapy, difficult conversations, trust to rebuild. Dale's poison had spread far, and cleaning it out would take time, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. Jerome found me on the porch later, 2 cups of tea in his hands. We sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. The investigation at Meridian was ongoing. Dale was fighting back, hiring lawyers, making threats, but his power was broken, his reputation destroyed, his weapons turned against him. My mother called as we sat there. She'd been going through more family records and found something interesting. Dale's pattern went back further than we'd thought. Even in college, there had been incidents. Roommates who'd crossed him and faced mysterious troubles. Professors who'd given him poor grades and found themselves under investigation. The full scope of Dale's pathology was staggering, but it also explained so much. Why family members had learned to stay quiet, why challenging him always brought consequences, why he'd reacted so violently to our family tree. We weren't just mixed race. We were living proof that his worldview was wrong, that love could cross boundaries he believed were sacred, that families could be beautiful in their diversity. Our very existence challenged everything he believed, and he'd tried to destroy us for it, but he'd failed. Despite everything, despite the pain and fear and isolation, we were still here, still together, still a family. The next phase would bring new challenges, legal proceedings, family rifts to heal, a community to rebuild trust with. Dale wouldn't give up easily. His kind never did. But we were ready now. We had allies, evidence, and most importantly, we had each other. As Jerome and I headed inside, I thought about the family tree that had started it all. Dale's version, pristine and white and empty of our children's faces, and our version, colorful and complex and beautiful in its truth. I knew which one would endure. Love always outlasts hate. Truth always overcomes lies. And family, real family, isn't about blood purity or maintaining appearances. It's about choosing each other again and again, especially when the world tries to tear you apart. The battle with Dale wasn't over, but the war, we'd already won that. Every time Marcus drew our family, every time Aisha danced with joy, every time Jerome and I chose love over fear, our family tree would continue to grow, branches reaching in all directions, roots deep and strong, and Dale's bitter legacy would wither and fade, remembered only as a cautionary tale about the poison of prejudice and the price of silence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, our family was safe, together, and whole, and that was enough. The next morning brought chaos. Dale had been fired from Meridian Financial Services, and he blamed us entirely. He showed up at our house at 6 a.m., pounding on the door until Jerome went outside. I watched through the window as Dale gestured wildly, his face red with fury. Jerome stood calm, arms crossed, letting Dale exhaust himself with accusations and threats. When Dale finally left, Jerome came back inside and immediately started checking all our locks. We both knew this was just the beginning of Dale's meltdown. By noon, our phones were ringing nonstop. Dale had called every family member, spinning wild tales about how we'd destroyed his career through lies and manipulation. Some relatives saw through it immediately, but others wavered. My elderly aunt called, confused and upset, asking why we would ruin Dale's life over a family tree disagreement. I spent hours on the phone, calmly explaining the documented evidence, the pattern of harassment, the company's own investigation findings. Some family members understood, others remained skeptical. The family divide deepened. Marcus came home from school that day with a note from his teacher. She wanted us to know that someone had called the school claiming to be a concerned relative, asking about our children's attendance records and academic performance. The school had refused to provide information, but she thought we should know. That evening, we discovered Dale had created a social media account under a fake name, posting in local parent groups about the dangers of letting children from unstable homes interact with their kids. Jerome's tech-savvy nephew helped us document everything before reporting the accounts. The next few days became a blur of defensive actions. We installed security cameras after finding our garbage cans overturned and mail scattered. We varied our routes to school and work after noticing the same car following us twice. We kept the kids close, explaining in age-appropriate terms that Uncle Dale was having some problems, and we needed to be careful. Chen called with an update. Meridian's investigation had expanded. They'd found evidence of Dale misusing company resources going back years, client information accessed without authorization, expense reports that didn't add up, background checks run on business rivals' families. The company was now working with law enforcement on potential criminal charges, but Dale's behavior grew more erratic. He started showing up at places we frequented, the grocery store, where he'd loudly tell anyone who'd listen about his ungrateful sister who destroyed his life, the park, where he'd sit on a bench watching our kids play until we left, always careful to stay just within legal boundaries, never quite crossing into restraining order territory. Sandra reached out through my mother. She was filing for divorce and wanted to share information. We met at a neutral location, and she handed over a box of documents, financial records showing Dale had hidden assets, emails where he discussed his plans to discredit various family members, a journal where he detailed his grievances against anyone who'd ever challenged him. Among the papers was something that made my stomach turn. Dale had been researching boarding schools for troubled children, specifically ones that accepted court-ordered placements. He'd bookmarked articles about gaining emergency custody of nieces and nephews. His plan had been bigger than we'd realized. The information from Sandra proved valuable when Dale made his next move. He filed a complaint with the state bar against our lawyer, claiming we'd obtained legal services through fraudulent means. He contacted Jerome's employer, suggesting they investigate Jerome's work history. He even reached out to my publisher, claiming I was an unfit mother who shouldn't be writing children's books. Each attack required a response. Our lawyer easily defeated the bar complaint. Jerome's employer, who'd known him for 15 years, dismissed Dale's allegations immediately. My publisher, familiar with Dale's type, thanked me for the heads up and blocked his emails. But the stress was taking its toll. Aisha had started having panic attacks at school. Marcus wet the bed for the first time in years. Jerome developed insomnia, spending nights staring out windows, watching for Dale's car. I found myself jumping at every unexpected noise, checking locks obsessively, planning escape routes from every room. Then came the breakthrough we'd been waiting for. The prosecutor's office contacted us. Based on Meridian's investigation and the evidence of systematic harassment, they were filing charges against Dale. Misuse of computer systems, identity theft, harassment, and filing false reports. Each charge carried potential jail time. Dale's arrest happened on a Thursday morning. We weren't there to see it, but my mother called, crying. She'd watched from her window as police led him away in handcuffs. Despite everything, she still loved her son, still grieved for the man he could have been. The family reactions were swift and divided. Some rallied around Dale, convinced he was being persecuted. Others finally understood the depth of his actions. The extended family split into camps, with heated arguments erupting at every gathering. We focused on our immediate family's healing. The kids started therapy with a specialist in family trauma. Jerome and I joined a support group for families dealing with harassment. Slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding our sense of security. Dale's legal troubles multiplied. I can feel how exhausted Jerome must be staying up all night watching for Dale's car and checking locks. It's so brave of Sandra to come forward with all those documents about Dale's plans, especially that horrible part about boarding schools for the kids. As news of his arrest spread, other victims came forward. A former coworker whose career he'd sabotaged, a neighbor whose dog he'd repeatedly reported until they'd been forced to rehome it, a college roommate who'd left school after mysterious accusations surfaced. The prosecutor built a comprehensive case showing decades of targeted harassment. We attended every court hearing, sitting quietly in the back, bearing witness. Dale's expensive lawyer tried various defenses, painting him as a concerned family man, a victim of misunderstanding, a successful businessman brought down by jealous relatives, but the evidence was overwhelming. During one hearing, the prosecutor presented the emails Dale had sent to CPS about us. Reading them in open court, hearing the calculated lies designed to tear our family apart, I had to leave the room. Jerome found me in the hallway, shaking with delayed rage and relief. The trial date was set for 6 months out. Dale, out on bail with restrictions, was prohibited from contacting us directly or indirectly, but we still felt his presence. Family gatherings became tense affairs, with some relatives refusing to attend if we were there. Others refused to attend if Dale's supporters were there. Holiday planning became a complex negotiation. My mother aged visibly during this time. She stood by us, testified to Dale's patterns of behavior, but the cost was evident. She'd lost her son, not to death but to his own choices. She spent hours looking through old photos, trying to understand where things had gone wrong. The kids, resilient as children can be, slowly began to recover. Marcus started drawing again, not just family pictures but elaborate adventure scenes. Aisha regained her confidence, standing up to a classmate who made comments about our family. They still had bad days, nightmares, and anxiety, but good days began to outnumber bad. 3 months before the trial, Dale violated his bail conditions. He'd sent emails to extended family members, trying to coordinate testimony against us. When the judge revoked his bail, Dale's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. He screamed in court about injustice, about family betrayal, about racial purity, his true self exposed for all to see. With Dale in jail awaiting trial, a strange peace settled over our lives. The constant vigilance relaxed slightly. We still had security measures in place, still documented everything, but the immediate threat had passed. We could focus on healing rather than just defending. The trial itself was anticlimactic. Faced with overwhelming evidence and multiple victims testifying, Dale's lawyer negotiated a plea deal. 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, mandatory psychological counseling, and no contact orders with all victims. Dale took the deal rather than risk a longer sentence. The day of his sentencing, I sat between Jerome and my mother in the courtroom. Dale, in orange jumpsuit and shackles, looked smaller somehow. When given the chance to speak, he launched into a rambling justification of his actions, blaming everyone but himself. The judge cut him off, delivered the sentence, and it was over. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt neither triumph nor sadness, just a bone-deep exhaustion and relief. Our family had survived, damaged but intact, scarred but still standing. In the parking lot, family members gathered in awkward clusters. Some approached us with apologies, finally understanding what we'd endured. Others just walked past without acknowledgement, choosing Dale even now. The family would never be the same, but perhaps that wasn't entirely bad. The silence that had protected Dale for so long was broken forever. As we drove home, Aisha asked if we could finally put our family pictures back up, all of them, even the ones we'd hidden during the CPS investigation. That evening, we did exactly that. Our walls filled again with images of our beautiful, mixed, resilient family. The healing would take time, trust would rebuild slowly. The kids would carry scars we couldn't fully erase, but we were together, we were safe, and we were free from Dale's poison at last. Our family tree, with all its diverse branches, would continue growing stronger, rooted in love rather than fear. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. The kids smiled more. Jerome slept through the night. I could answer the door without my heart racing. We'd learned to live with our history while not letting it define our future. Some family relationships were lost forever, but others had grown stronger through the trial. We'd found our true tribe, the people who stood by us when it mattered most. Our story wasn't unique. Too many families face harassment, discrimination, and targeted attacks for being different. But we'd survived, we'd fought back, and we'd won. Not a fairy tale victory, but a real one. Messy and complicated and ongoing. And that was enough. Thanks for watching all the way through. You are a real one. To support me and the video, like the video.